Hi, I'm Nadia. Welcome back to my channel. Or if it's your first time, welcome. Today I want to talk about some things that I quit in my 50s, and I'm glad that I did. And when I say quit these things, I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean I stopped doing things that were draining me, overwhelming me, or pulling me away from the life that I actually wanted to live. Because I think at this age you start realizing something. Your time matters, your energy matters, your peace matters, and some things are just too much. So today I wanted to talk to you about a few things that I quit in my 50s and that I'm glad that I did. The first thing I quit was repeatedly putting myself in a sensory overload situation. And that one took me a while to understand. For years, I would put myself in these situations that were just too much for me. Too much noise, too many people, too loud, way too much stimulation. Sometimes it was too much rushing around, too many things coming at me at once. And I don't mean big events. Sometimes it could just be a crowded store, maybe a local restaurant, a packed gathering, or a concert. Too much was going on around me. Too many conversations. The lights, the energy was all over the place in these rooms or these spaces. And by the time they were over, I was mentally drained, mentally exhausted, because my whole being was on high alert. And I found myself, after leaving, instead of saying to myself, that was a lot of fun, I would be saying to myself, thank God that's over. I couldn't wait to get home. I was excited to get back to my own space, excited to be where it was quiet and comfortable, familiar and calm. And I don't think I realized how much I was looking forward to the ending instead of just actually enjoying myself and being in the moment. And that is the part that I started paying attention to. Because if I'm spending the whole time looking forward to the end, then that tells me something. You know, I should be social. I should be able to handle it or deal with it, because I was afraid of disappointing people, because I felt obligated, not because I actually wanted to go. I didn't want to explain myself. Why? And I didn't want someone to think I was being rude or antisocial. But now in my 50s, I know better. Some environments are just too overwhelming for me, way too stimulating. Then that doesn't mean I'm just going to stop going to parties or gatherings or events. I can still be social. I just have to start learning to pay attention to those certain stimulations, those certain situations that makes me feel that way. And I've learned that there is a difference between occasionally stretching myself and repeatedly putting myself in these situations that just wipe me out at the end. You know, if I'm just showing up and I'm not there, 100% there, then why would I want to go? Why should I be there? What's the point? Now I'm being much more selective and trying not to allow myself to feel obligated or feel bad. I certainly can go to some of these events and stay for a little while. I don't have to stay through the entire thing. I can maybe go in a little late and then leave a little early. I'm just learning that my nervous system does not need to be pushed to its limit. And at this stage in my life, I want to enjoy the things that I've said yes to, not just survive them. And that's the difference. The other thing that I've stopped doing, and a lot of it does have to do with what I was just talking about, is saying yes when really I mean to say, or I should have said no. As a Gen X woman in her late 50s, I can see how this started very young for me. You know, I've worked since I was 14 years old, and being dependable was something I learned very early in life. You showed up, you did what you needed to do, you made sure to help out, you made sure to help figure things out, you didn't make any excuses. And in a lot of ways, especially probably in my career, that's helped me out. And I'm very proud of it. But I also think that I carried it on way too far, because somewhere along the line, saying yes just became automatic. Sure, I can help. Of course I can do that. I'll take care of it. Even when I really knew I didn't have the energy in me to do it, or the mental bandwidth, I still did it. And as I got older, especially after all these years of working and being responsible, I started feeling it more. I was just tired of always being that person, the person that someone or people went to. And I believe that a lot of people started expecting it of me. And it got to the point where after saying yes, just as I was saying earlier about overstimulation, it made me unhappy and it made me frustrated. And it was my decision to make. I want to make that clear. No one forced me to say yes. I think it just became such a habit for me to say yes that I didn't know how to say no. And it became my pattern. Not to mention, if you do it yourself, it'll be done right. But now I'm starting to realize that always being dependable doesn't mean that I'm always available. And doesn't mean that I should be the one handling everything. I can still be helpful, but I don't have to be the one that does it. And if being responsible equals starting to ignore yourself, I don't want to be the responsible one. Especially when you start to realize not everyone values your yeses. Going out of your way for some people doesn't mean that they will go out of the way for you. That's not who I want to be anymore. I try to pause before I answer. I don't always need to say yes immediately. And not every invitation, favor, problem, or expectation needs to become mine. So now I'm trying to be more aware. And what I've learned about the word no is that it's not being rude. I'm not being selfish. No is just the honest answer. And I would rather be honest and upfront and say no than say yes and overcommit myself and then feel resentful. Resentful yes is not a yes. Just means that it's a sign that I ignored that I should not have. And I'm tired of doing that. Another thing I realized that I've stopped doing or making an effort to stop doing is over-explaining myself, which thinking now I probably have throughout this video. And this hasn't been easy for me. I think for me, I over-explained because I didn't want to seem as though I was being difficult, rude, or selfish. So I would over-explain. I would give too many details. Why I couldn't, for example, why I'm saying no, or why I can't make it to your grandniece's baby shower, or why I just want to be alone. The fact that I felt like I needed to explain myself for not wanting to go somewhere, or why I changed my mind, or why something was overwhelming for me, I realized that I wasn't really over-explaining. What I was really doing, though, was defending myself. And there's a difference. I was trying to prove that the reasons were good enough. I was making sure that people weren't disappointed with my decisions. I didn't want to upset people. I wanted to soften my decision, I guess. But I'm starting to learn that not every decision that I make needs to turn into some kind of a courtroom defense. But I've become firmer, I guess. I can say no without having to give a speech. If I want to change my mind, I don't need anyone's approval. People that really know me or a defense, they already know my character. And if there are some people out there that are committed to misunderstanding me, then there's nothing I can do to convince them anyway. So now I'm just trying to make myself more clear and trying not to over-explain. And then I'm done. Well, I just leave it there. And that should be enough. And that's enough. And another thing that I came to realize at this stage of my life was that I needed to stop rushing through everything. And this feels much different today than it did years ago. Because when I was younger, I thought, oh, I have so much time. I can get so much done. I can get so much accomplished. And if I don't, that's okay. I have, next week or next year or next holiday. But then you get to this stage of life and you realize how fast it went. In the past, I was always moving from one thing to the next. Work, errands, responsibilities, problems, my chores, appointments, bills, family obligations, things that needed to be fixed, people who needed something. And I was constantly trying to keep up, or keeping up the best that I could. And somewhere in the midst of this, I don't think that I was fully present. Yes, I was getting a lot done. I was handling everything. I was showing up and I was pushing through. And now I can look back and honestly say that this time has flown by. It's been a blur. And it wasn't a blur because it didn't matter. And it wasn't a blur because I didn't have good times or good moments. It was because I was moving so fast, trying to get everything done, that I never really stopped to reflect or to enjoy those moments. And that's really difficult to admit because I'll never get those moments or that time back. When I think back, there were some times in my life that I probably took for granted, you know, the good times in my life. And that's tough. That's tough to admit. But I can't live in the past or take those moments now with me. I wish I had appreciated those moments or even realized how happy I was in some of those moments. And that's really tough sometimes. You know, and some of those moments aren't these dramatic events that happen in my life. Sometimes just the little things, like the quiet evenings you had with someone you enjoyed spending time with. You know, having a simple dinner with your family, a great conversation, enjoying the home or the homes that I have lived in the past, people that I used to spend time with, but now I don't see them anymore. Even versions of myself that at the time I didn't realize I would outgrow. And I think that is one of the things that midlife does. It makes you realize that ordinary days is not as ordinary as they seem when you're living them. At the time, they just feel like a Tuesday. Or another busy week. Another thing to get through. Another obligation that I have to manage. But then these ordinary days just become these memories. Memories that I wished I would have paid more attention to. And so now I don't want to keep missing my own life because I'm still rushing around through it. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything like I used to. FOMO was real back then. Probably a lot of the reasons why I did say yes to a lot of things and did go to a lot of things that I didn't want to go to. I wanted to make sure I was keeping up with the Joneses, getting in as much as I can, having some life that other people would think were interesting. So now I'm not interested in that type of life anymore. I don't want to go somewhere just because I'm afraid I'll miss out. I don't need to fill every empty space because quiet is uncomfortable. And I don't want to focus on how life looks instead of living it. And when I finally realized it was time to slow down, it wasn't because I was giving up or I didn't care anymore. I just want to enjoy my life. And I want to make sure that I'm where I want to be with who I want to be. My home, my dog, my boring routines, the way my house feels when it's quiet, sitting outside, watching the birds, listening to all the sounds, doing my little projects, my do-it-yourselves, getting a lot of pride in what I've created. What I noticed was a big shift for me. And the fact that now I really enjoy it. I enjoy what I'm doing. Small things matter to me now. And that's why I quit rushing through my life. And a lot of what I just mentioned, one of the things that I quit was probably or is probably the best decision I have ever made. And that was that I quit drinking. No, I haven't mentioned this in my previous videos, but it is a big part of my life. And it was always a big part of my life, the drinking part anyway. And when I quit drinking, it changed a lot in my life. I see myself differently now. I'm proud of what I've become since I quit drinking. My time is spent now enjoying life and not trying to figure out what I'm going to drink that evening or where I'm going to buy my wine. I have much better patience. I can tolerate more things now. My stress levels no longer through the roof. So once I quit drinking and I gave up alcohol and became sober, I started getting my life back in small, steady ways. And I'm very grateful and very happy that I did that. Of course, there are many more other things that I've quit or stopped doing as I've become older. And a lot of the things that I've mentioned earlier in this video, me to make those decisions. Even if it made me feel a little uncomfortable sometimes. Saying no. Sometimes even keeping company that wasn't good for me. So, quitting is not always a bad thing. A lot of these things that I quit helped me finally pay attention to my life. And now I protect myself. And I'm more at peace. I'm healthier. I enjoy my home more. I have my routines. I'm not running around. I've probably become a little boring. And I really, really love being sober. And I grow from it every day. I hope this wasn't too much. I know it was a little deep. And I know that there's a lot more that I can say about this. Let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything else you can contribute. Or something that you noticed that when you quit in your 50s helped you to become a better person. Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Thank you for watching. And I hope to see you next time.